The intergalactic High Court resembled a vast, gleaming ring suspended against the velvet backdrop of space. Its curved architecture caught the light of distant stars, refracting them into a shimmering aura that announced its importance to all approaching vessels. Today, the Grand Assembly Hall within this structure buzzed with an unusual energy as representatives from over 300 civilizations gathered for the Galactic Technology Summit. Elara Nguyen stood at the entrance, her dark eyes scanning the cavernous space filled with beings of every conceivable form. Some floated in containment fields of specialized atmosphere. Others shifted between solid and gaseous states, while many wore humanoid forms that belied their alien nature. Despite her calm exterior, Elara's heart pounded against her ribs. At 29, she was not only the youngest engineer in the Terran delegation, but also the first human ever chosen to present at this prestigious gathering. "Remember why we're here," Captain Mehra whispered beside her, his weathered face set in determination. "This isn't just about technology. It's about respect." Elara nodded, adjusting the sleek interface band on her wrist, her most prized creation and the culmination of 15 years of obsessive work. The device looked deceptively simple, a slim metallic bracelet embedded with pulsing blue circuitry, but its capabilities represented humanity's greatest technological leap since achieving faster-than-light travel. "Consciousness-directed matter," she murmured. "If they don't believe it after today, they never will." The Terran team, a modest group of 7 engineers and scientists, made their way through the assembly hall toward their designated presentation area. Unlike the grand delegations from older civilizations, which often numbered in the hundreds, Earth's representatives moved as a tight, efficient unit. They carried no ornate technology displays or holographic projections of their achievements. Instead, each wore the simple blue and silver uniform of the Terran Engineering Corps, with only Elara's wrist device distinguishing her as the lead presenter. As they passed, conversations hushed momentarily before erupting into whispers. Elara caught fragments of translated speech in her earpiece. "Primitives still using physical tools. Barely 5 centuries of space travel. Why are we wasting time on Terran technology?" Captain Mehra's jaw tightened, but he maintained his dignified stride. "Ignore them," he said, though Elara could hear the strain in his voice. "They've been doing this since we first entered galactic space." Elara understood the sentiment all too well. Despite humanity's remarkable progress, colonies on 12 planets, terraforming technology that had restored Earth's damaged ecosystems, and energy production that had eliminated scarcity, they remained classified as a Tier 3 civilization by the Galactic Council. This designation relegated humans to the status of developing species, with limited voting rights and restricted access to certain technologies. Today, that might change. The central podium where the technology judges presided stood elevated at the heart of the chamber. 3 beings occupied the bench, a Vexrian with crystalline appendages that refracted light into complex patterns, a meridian collective consciousness housed in a translucent cylinder, and in the center, Judge Zalturon, representative of the ancient Ardelian race and chief technological assessor of the Galactic Council. Zalturon's imposing figure dominated the podium. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, his blue-scaled body was adorned with ceremonial implants that glowed with inner light. His 4 eyes, arranged in a perfect diamond pattern on his elongated face, focused on data streams only he could see. The Ardelians had been among the first spacefaring races, with a technological history spanning 50,000 years. Their judgment carried immense weight in all matters of scientific advancement. As the Terran delegation approached the presentation area, a synthetic voice announced throughout the chamber, "The Council recognizes the Terran delegation, presenting advances in material manipulation technology. Designation, consciousness-directed matter." Zalturon's upper eyes blinked in apparent disinterest while his lower pair remained fixed on a holographic display. He made no gesture of acknowledgement. Elara stepped forward into the designated circle, activating the arena's sensory fields. Immediately, projection drones surrounded her, ready to amplify and display her demonstration to the entire assembly. "Honored judges, distinguished representatives," she began, her voice steady despite the tension coiling in her stomach. "For centuries, the dominant paradigm in material engineering has been molecular construction, the precise arrangement of atoms to form desired structures and functions." She paused, surveying the audience. Most appeared indifferent. Some were engaged in private conversations, barely acknowledging her presence. "Today, I present a fundamental shift in this approach, one that bypasses the limitations of traditional molecular engineering." She raised her wrist, allowing the light to catch the blue circuitry of her device. "We call it consciousness-directed matter, or CDM. It allows for instantaneous reconfiguration of complex systems through direct mental interface with specialized nanomatter." A ripple of murmurs passed through the assembly. Several delegates leaned forward, their attention finally captured. "Rather than programming each molecular interaction," Alara continued, "CDM creates a field where human consciousness directly influences quantum probability states, allowing matter to reorganize according to the operator's mental template." Judge Zal Turan's upper eyes swiveled toward her. "You claim conscious control over quantum states?" His voice carried the harmonics typical of Ardelian speech, deep resonances layered with higher tones that conveyed skepticism. "That would violate the uncertain principle established by the Krell physicists 8,000 years ago." Alara smiled slightly. "With respect, Judge, the uncertain principle addresses observation, not influence. Our technology doesn't measure quantum states. It shapes them through consciousness." "Preposterous," Zal Turan declared, all four eyes now focused on her. "The energy requirements alone would exceed your species' total production capacity." "Not if the energy comes from the consciousness itself," Alara countered. "Our research indicates that consciousness operates outside conventional energy parameters. We've developed a way to harness that." The Meridian Judge's translucent cylinder pulsed with colored light, their way of indicating interest. The synthetic voice translated, "We request demonstration of this technology." This was the moment Alara had prepared for. She nodded respectfully and turned to the center of the presentation area where a standard replication unit had been provided. "For this demonstration, I'll create a functioning quantum processor using only raw materials and the CDM interface." She gestured, and the arena's systems delivered a container of metallic powder, a mixture of rare elements used in advanced computing. Zal Turan made a dismissive gesture. "Replication technology is hardly novel. The Ardelians mastered molecular printing 12,000 years ago." "This isn't replication," Alara said, her confidence growing. "It's creation." She held her hand over the container, and her wrist device emitted a soft blue glow. The metallic powder began to rise and swirl in the air, forming intricate patterns that grew increasingly complex. As the assembly watched, the particles reorganized themselves into layered structures, circuits forming before their eyes. Within moments, a complete quantum processor hovered above the container, its components still assembling, refining, optimizing in real time. "This processor is configuring itself based on my mental template," Alara explained. "I'm not directing each particle, I'm thinking of the function, and the CDM interface translates that intent into physical form." She gestured again, and the processor settled onto a testing platform. Immediately, diagnostic readings appeared in the air above it, confirming its functionality. "Standard replication requires pre-existing patterns," she continued. "CDM creates from conceptual understanding. Furthermore, the process uses 1,000th the energy of conventional molecular assembly." The Vexrian Judge's crystalline appendages shifted position, creating a new pattern. "The processor appears functional, but simple computing technology is hardly revolutionary." "Of course," Alara agreed. "But this was merely to demonstrate the basic principle. The true potential of CDM lies in its application to complex systems, particularly in repair and adaptation." She turned to face Judge Zal Turon directly. With your permission, I would like to demonstrate CDM's capabilities on a more sophisticated system. Perhaps one of the court's transport vessels. A dangerous silence fell over the assembly. Requesting access to council technology was unprecedented for a Tier 3 species. Zal Turon's scales darkened slightly, a sign of displeasure among Ardelians. You propose to modify council property with untested Terran technology? He asked, his harmonics shifting to lower, threatening tones. Not modify, Alara clarified. Simply demonstrate repair capabilities. Any changes would be non-invasive and reversible. The three judges conferred briefly in private communication channels. After a moment, the Meridian judge pulsed with decision colors. Request denied, came the synthetic translation. Insufficient evidence of safety protocols. Alara had anticipated this response. I understand your concerns. Perhaps we could use our own vessel for demonstration. The Terran ship that brought us here is equipped with systems familiar to most delegates. This was a calculated risk. Their ship, the Curiosity, was an older model, but its systems incorporated technologies from various galactic sources, making it an ideal showcase for CDM's versatility. After another brief conference, the Vexrian judge signaled agreement. Acceptable compromise. The demonstration may proceed using Terran technology only. Captain Mehara gave Alara a subtle nod of approval as she activated her communication link to the Curiosity, instructing its systems to prepare for the demonstration. On the main display screen, the ship appeared in orbit around the station, a modest vessel compared to the grand ships of older civilizations, but still a source of pride for the Terran delegation. For this demonstration, Alara announced, I will use CDM to perform a complete diagnostic and repair of our vessel's propulsion system, a task that typically requires a specialized team in approximately 48 hours to complete. She raised her wrist, and the CDM interface glowed brighter. On the screen, viewers could see nanomaterial being deployed from a small container on the ship's hull, a cloud of microscopic particles that began to surround the propulsion section. The nanomatter is now interfacing with the ship's systems, Alara explained. Through the CDM link, I can... Enough of this charade. Zal Turon interrupted, rising to his full height. His scales had darkened to a deep indigo, a sign of extreme displeasure or anger. I have reviewed your submitted research materials during this presentation, Engineer Nguyen, and found them woefully inadequate. He gestured to his personal display, which projected into the air for all to see. Your so-called consciousness interface is nothing more than a primitive form of the neuromechanical linking developed by the Praxis Concordance millennia ago. Your revolutionary technology is merely a crude adaptation of principles already established in galactic science. Murmurs rippled through the assembly as delegates exchanged glances. Some nodded in agreement with the judge's assessment. Others seemed uncertain. With respect, Alara began, our approach differs fundamentally from neuromechanical linking. The Praxis system requires direct neural implants and operates on predetermined patterns. CDM works through consciousness itself, without... I have heard enough, Zal Turon declared, his voice resonating throughout the chamber. The Ardelian Scientific Council has reviewed over 8 million technological innovations in our history. We recognize patterns of development, Engineer Nguyen, and can distinguish between genuine advancement and or repackaged concepts. He turned to address the entire assembly. The Terran presentation is hereby concluded. Their technology represents no significant advancement worthy of Council recognition or reclassification. They remain, as they have been, a species of basic technological understanding, suitable for maintenance roles and infrastructure development, but not yet ready for higher tier designation. The dismissal was brutally clear. Alara stood motionless, the CDM interface still glowing on her wrist, its light suddenly seeming feeble against the grandeur of the assembly hall. Captain Mehara's face had hardened into a mask of controlled anger. while the other members of the delegation showed varying degrees of shock and humiliation. Furthermore, Zal Turan continued, his tone now almost casual. I find the presumption of this presentation troubling. The Terran delegation has wasted the valuable time of this assembly with claims that cannot be substantiated. He made a subtle gesture with one hand, and suddenly alarms blared from the display showing the Curiosity. The ship's systems were shutting down one by one, lights flickering, stabilizers failing. It appears, Zal Turan observed with mock concern, that your vessel is experiencing a significant malfunction. Perhaps a demonstration of your remarkable repair technology is indeed in order, though not in the manner you intended. The assembly erupted in a mixture of shocked gasps and uncomfortable laughter. Even species with long-standing diplomatic ties to Earth seemed unwilling to challenge Zal Turan's blatant sabotage. You've disabled our ship, Captain Mehra stated, his voice tight with controlled fury. I have done nothing, Zal Turan replied smoothly. I merely deactivated the Council's protective field that was compensating for your vessel's inherent instabilities. If your technology is as advanced as you claim, surely this presents no significant challenge. Elara watched as the Curiosity's primary systems failed completely, leaving it adrift. The ship carried not only the delegation's equipment, but also their research data and personal belongings. More critically, without functioning systems, it would eventually lose orbit and be drawn into the nearby sun. This is a violation of diplomatic protocol, another member of the Terran team protested. Stepping forward, protocol applies to recognized diplomatic entities, Zal Turan countered. Tier 3 civilizations are present by invitation only. An invitation I am now rescinding. He gestured dismissively. The Terran delegation is ordered to withdraw from this assembly and return to their designated sector. Council vessels will provide transport as your ship appears, unsuitable for the journey. The humiliation was complete. Being transported home in Council vessels would be the final indignity, confirming humanity's dependent status in the eyes of the galactic community. Captain Mehra turned to lead his team away, his shoulders rigid with restrained anger. The other delegates began to disperse, some watching the Terrans with pity, others with thinly veiled amusement. But Elara remained standing in the presentation circle, her eyes fixed on the display showing their disabled ship. Engineer Nguyen, Captain Mehra said quietly, we must withdraw. No, Elara replied, her voice barely audible. Engineer. No, she repeated, louder this time. She raised her eyes to meet Zal Turan's gaze directly. I haven't completed my demonstration. The judge regarded her with all four eyes, his expression unreadable. Your demonstration is terminated, Engineer Nguyen. The Council has rendered its judgment. You've rendered an opinion, Elara corrected, her voice carrying clearly through the suddenly silent chamber. But you haven't witnessed what CDM can actually do. She raised her wrist, the interface glowing with renewed intensity. You've provided the perfect demonstration scenario, Judge Zal Turan. Thank you for that. Before he could respond, Elara closed her eyes, focusing her consciousness through the CDM interface. On the display, the cloud of nanomatter still surrounding the Curiosity suddenly pulsed with brilliant blue energy. What is happening? Demanded the Vexrian judge. Crystalline appendages shifting rapidly. She's attempting to repair their vessel, Zal Turan said dismissively. A futile gesture that will... He stopped abruptly as the display showed something unexpected. The nanomatter wasn't merely repairing the ship, it was completely disassembling it. Within seconds, the Curiosity had dissolved into a swirling cloud of component particles. Gasps echoed throughout the assembly. Even Captain Mehra looked shocked. Elara, what are you doing? She didn't respond, her focus absolute as she directed the CDM process. The cloud of particles began to reorganize with astonishing speed, forming new structures, new systems, new configurations that bore little resemblance to the original vessel. "Impossible," someone whispered in the stunned silence. On the screen, a new ship was taking form, sleeker, more efficient, with systems arranged in patterns unfamiliar to even the most advanced civilizations present. Within exactly 60 seconds from the beginning of the process, the transformation was complete. Where the outdated Curiosity had been, a vessel of extraordinary design now orbited the station. Its hull gleamed with an iridescent surface that seemed to shift and adapt to the surrounding space. Energy readings displayed alongside the image showed output levels far exceeding the original ship's capabilities, while using minimal power. Elara opened her eyes. Lowering her wrist, the blue glow of the CDM interface faded to its normal state. "Complete molecular reconstruction in 60 seconds, she stated calmly. "Not repair, rebirth." The assembly had fallen into absolute silence. Every being, regardless of species or status, stared at the display in undisguised astonishment. "The new vessel," Elara continued, her voice steady, "incorporates 17 fundamental improvements to the original design, optimizing energy consumption, structural integrity, and navigational capabilities. Its hull now features adaptive molecular shielding that responds to environmental threats without requiring conscious control." She turned to face Judge Zal Turon directly. "This is what consciousness-directed matter truly offers, not incremental improvement, but transformative recreation based on conceptual understanding rather than predetermined patterns." Zal Turon remained silent, all four eyes fixed on the display readings that confirmed the new vessel's capabilities. For perhaps the first time in his long life, the Ardelian judge appeared genuinely speechless. The Meridian judge's cylinder pulsed with rapid color changes, indicating intense internal communication among the collective consciousness. Finally, the synthetic voice translated. "The Council requires verification of this demonstration. We request examination of the reconstructed vessel." "Of course," Elara agreed. "I've instructed it to dock at Examination Bay 7. Your technical teams are welcome to inspect every aspect of its construction." As if responding to her words, the new ship smoothly changed course and proceeded toward the designated docking area, its movements displaying a grace that seemed almost organic. The assembly erupted into chaotic discussion. Delegates who had previously ignored the Terran presentation now crowded forward, demanding information, offering alliances, proposing research partnerships. Captain Mehra and the rest of the Terran team stood protectively around Elara, fielding the sudden onslaught of attention. Through it all, Judge Zal Turon remained motionless, his scales shifting through colors that reflected complex emotions unfamiliar to human observers. Finally, he raised a hand, and the assembly fell silent once more. "The demonstration is noted," he said, his harmonics strained. "The Council will require extensive testing and verification before any conclusions can be drawn. This assembly is temporarily adjourned while we conduct preliminary examinations of the Terran vessel." With that pronouncement, he descended from the podium and strode from the chamber, his ceremonial robes billowing behind him. The other judges followed, accompanied by a team of technical specialists from various species. As the assembly dispersed into excited clusters of conversation, Captain Mehra turned to Elara, his expression a mixture of amazement and concern. "That was either the most brilliant move in diplomatic history," he murmured, "or the beginning of an interstellar incident. Either way, I don't think humanity will be ignored anymore." Elara nodded, suddenly feeling the exhaustion that followed intensive CDM work. "They needed to see what we're actually capable of," she said. "Words weren't enough." "What exactly did you do to the ship?" asked another team member, eyes wide with wonder. "Those systems configurations. I've never seen anything like them." Elara smiled faintly. "I didn't design them in detail. That's the beauty of CDM. I focused on optimal function, and the nanomatter translated that intent into physical form, finding solutions I might never have conceived through conventional engineering. She looked toward the exit where Judge Zal Turan had disappeared. That's what he didn't understand. CDM isn't just another tool. It's a partnership between human consciousness and matter itself. 6 hours later, the Terran delegation had been moved to a private chamber adjacent to the examination bay where their new vessel was undergoing intensive scrutiny. Refreshments suitable for human consumption had been provided, a courtesy that would have seemed unthinkable earlier that day. The change in treatment was subtle but unmistakable. Elara sat apart from the others, reviewing data from her CDM interface. The massive energy expenditure of reconstructing an entire starship had pushed the technology to its limits, revealing both strengths and vulnerabilities that she was eager to address in future iterations. A soft tone announced a visitor, and the chamber door slid open to reveal a being Elara recognized as Tarlix, a Krell engineer whose species was renowned for their work in quantum mechanics. Earlier, during her presentation, she had noticed him watching with thinly veiled skepticism. Now, his posture suggested something closer to professional curiosity. "Engineer Huyen," he greeted, his translator rendering his complicated vocal patterns into English. "The examination teams have completed their preliminary assessment of your vessel." "And?" Captain Mera asked, stepping forward. Tarlix's sensory tendrils waved in a pattern that his species used to express amazement. "The results are unprecedented. The molecular structure of the hull material alone represents an advancement of approximately 300 years beyond current galactic standard." He turned to Elara directly. "I observed your demonstration with doubt. Engineer Nguyen, my species has studied consciousness-matter interactions for millennia. What you accomplished should not have been possible with your civilization's current understanding of quantum mechanics." Elara nodded, acknowledging his assessment. "Most of our theoretical frameworks were developed by Dr. Sophia Chow," she explained. She recognized that consciousness doesn't just observe quantum states, it participates in them. CDM simply provides a technological interface for that natural connection. Tarlix's tendrils rippled with interest. "Dr. Chow's work is not recorded in Council archives. She published her findings only on Earth," Elara said, a hint of sadness touching her voice. "She died before humanity entered galactic space." The memory of her mentor surfaced vividly. Dr. Sophia Chow, brilliant and uncompromising, pushing a teenage Elara to look beyond conventional physics. "Matter is just another expression of consciousness," she would insist during their late-night laboratory sessions. "The universe doesn't exist out there. It exists through our perception of it." Most of the scientific community had dismissed Chow's theories as philosophical speculation rather than practical science. Only after her death had Elara found the mathematical proofs hidden within her mentor's more esoteric writings, the foundations of what would eventually become CDM technology. "Her work deserves wider recognition," Tarlix said, interrupting Elara's reminiscence. "That's partly why we're here," Captain Mehra interjected. "Human achievements have been consistently undervalued in galactic assessments. Dr. Chow's work is just one example." Tarlix's tendrils curved in what might have been embarrassment. "The Council's technological classifications have historical biases," he admitted. "Newer species often face skepticism from established powers." Before anyone could respond, another tone sounded, this one carrying the distinct pattern that indicated a high-priority Council communication. The room's display activated automatically, revealing Judge Zal Turan's imposing figure. "The Terran delegation will report to Chamber 1 immediately," he announced without preamble. "The Council has reached a preliminary determination regarding today's events." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving an uncomfortable silence in its wake. "That was faster than expected," Captain Mehra observed, straightening his uniform. "Usually, the Council deliberates for days on technical assessments." Tarlix's tendrils twisted in a pattern of concern. "This is unusual," he agreed. "The speed suggests either extremely positive or extremely negative findings." Elara rose, checking her CDM interface one final time before nodding to her team. "Let's find out which—" The journey back to the main assembly chamber felt markedly different from their earlier passage. Delegates they encountered now stepped aside respectfully, some even offering formal acknowledgments. News of the demonstration had clearly spread throughout the station, transforming the Terran delegation from curiosities to objects of intense interest. Chamber 1, the formal designation for the Grand Assembly Hall, had been reconfigured for a smaller gathering. Rather than the full assembly of hundreds of species, only about 50 delegates were present, representing the most influential civilizations and the primary technological assessment teams. At the center, the 3 judges had resumed their positions on the elevated podium. As the Terran delegation entered, Elara immediately sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The earlier condescension had been replaced by something more complex, a mixture of caution, respect, and what might even have been apprehension. Judge Zal Turon's scales had returned to their normal azure hue, but his posture remained rigid as he acknowledged their arrival with a slight inclination of his head. "The delegation from Terra is recognized," he stated formally. "Engineer Elara Nguyen will step forward." Captain Mehra gave her a reassuring nod as she moved to the center of the chamber, standing alone before the judge's podium. "Engineer Nguyen," Zal Turon began, his harmonics carefully controlled. "The Council has conducted preliminary examinations of the vessel you created during your demonstration. Our findings require further analysis, but certain facts have been established beyond dispute." He paused, all 4 eyes focused intently on her. "The technology you have demonstrated exceeds theoretical parameters established by the Council's scientific division. The application of consciousness-directed principles to molecular reconstruction at the scale you achieved represents a significant advancement in material science." Coming from Zal Turon, this statement was tantamount to effusive praise. Elara maintained her composure, though she could feel her pulse quickening. "However," he continued, his tone hardening slightly, "the Council has concerns regarding the implications of this technology. The ability to completely reconstruct complex systems in mere moments has profound consequences for galactic security and stability." The Meridian Judge's cylinder pulsed with deliberative colors before the synthetic voice translated. "We require additional information regarding control mechanisms and safety protocols. The potential for misuse cannot be ignored." Elara nodded. "I understand your concerns. CDM technology has built-in limitations that prevent unauthorized or harmful applications. The consciousness-matter interface requires specific training and genetic compatibility that cannot be artificially replicated." "So you claim," Zal Turon replied skeptically. "Yet our preliminary scans detected no such limitations in the device you wear." "The limitations exist within me," Elara explained. "The CDM interface acts as a conduit, but the controlling factor is the consciousness itself. Without proper mental discipline and intention, the technology is inert." The Vexrian judge's crystalline appendages shifted to form a questioning pattern. "You propose that consciousness itself serves as the security protocol? This is philosophically interesting, but technically insufficient." "Not just consciousness," Elara clarified, "but specifically trained consciousness with ethical frameworks embedded at the quantum level of the interface. The technology literally cannot function for destructive purposes. The quantum states collapse if harmful intent is detected." This was the aspect of CDM that had proven most difficult to explain to conventional engineers. Dr. Chow had discovered that consciousness carried ethical signatures that influenced quantum behavior, a finding that merged science with philosophy in ways that made many uncomfortable. Zal Turon's upper eyes narrowed slightly. "These claims require verification beyond standard testing protocols. The Council proposes a more definitive assessment." He gestured, and a holographic image appeared in the center of the chamber, a vessel unlike any Elara had seen before. Its design was both ancient and advanced, with systems that seemed to blend organic and mechanical principles in ways that defied conventional engineering. "This is the Ascendant," Zal-Turon explained. A research vessel from the early expansion period of the Council, approximately 12,000 years ago. It was designed using principles that have since been abandoned due to their complexity and unpredictability. The ship rotated slowly in the display, revealing extensive damage to its hull and internal systems. Parts of it seemed to shimmer with unstable energy patterns, while others appeared completely inert. The Ascendant suffered a catastrophic failure during an experimental jump sequence. Zal-Turon continued. Its systems have resisted all attempts at repair or even comprehensive analysis. The technology it contains is considered lost, fragments of knowledge from a different era of galactic development. He fixed all four eyes on Alara. "If your consciousness-directed matter technology is as revolutionary as you claim, Engineer Nguyen, perhaps you would be willing to attempt reconstruction of this vessel as a definitive demonstration." A murmur passed through the assembled delegates. What Zal-Turon was proposing was unprecedented, giving a Tier 3 species access to ancient Council technology. Even in its damaged state, violated numerous protocols. "This is an extraordinary request," Captain Mera said, stepping forward to stand beside Alara. "The Council has consistently denied humanity access to historical technological records. And now you ask us to repair a vessel even your specialists cannot understand?" "Not repair," Zal-Turon corrected, echoing Alara's earlier words. "Rebirth. Is that not what Engineer Nguyen demonstrated? The ability to conceptually understand and recreate complex systems through consciousness alone." The challenge was clear and dangerous. If Alara failed, it would validate every dismissive assessment of human capabilities. If she succeeded, it would force a fundamental reconsideration of humanity's place in the galactic hierarchy. "Where is this vessel now?" she asked, studying the holographic display carefully. "Secure Dock 14, the Vexrian judge answered. "It has been maintained in stasis for millennia, awaiting a time when our understanding might advance sufficiently to reclaim its technology." Alara turned to Captain Mehra, their eyes meeting in silent communication. He gave her the barest nod, a gesture of trust in her judgment. She turned back to face the judges. "I accept the challenge. With one condition, regardless of the outcome. All data gathered during this demonstration becomes jointly owned by the Terran delegation and the Council. No exclusions or classifications applied retroactively." Zal-Turon's scales darkened slightly, a sign that her condition had struck a nerve. The Council was notorious for classifying information after the fact, particularly when it involved technological breakthroughs. After a moment of private communication among the judges, the Meridian cylinder pulsed with acceptance colors. "Terms accepted," came the synthetic translation. "The demonstration will commence in 3 hours. Engineer Nguyen may bring 2 assistants but no additional equipment beyond her current interface device." With that, the session was adjourned. As delegates dispersed, many cast curious glances toward Alara and the Terran team, clearly wondering whether they had witnessed the beginning of a spectacular failure or a historic breakthrough. "You realize what he's doing," Captain Mehra said quietly as they left the chamber. "This isn't a fair test. It's a trap designed to discredit us completely." Alara nodded, her mind already racing through possibilities. "The Ascendant is probably the most complex system in the Council's possession. If their best engineers couldn't repair it in 12,000 years, they're assuming I'll fail catastrophically. And if you do, they'll use that failure to dismiss CDM entirely," another team member added grimly. "But if I succeed," Alara countered, "they can't ignore us anymore." She looked at her wrist device, its blue circuitry pulsing with steady light. "Besides, they've made a critical error in their assumptions." "Which is?" Captain Mehra asked. Alara smiled faintly. They think I need to understand their technology to recreate it. I don't. CDM doesn't work that way. I only need to understand its purpose, its essence. The technology will find its own best expression through consciousness. 3 hours later, Elara stood before the Ascendant in Secure Dock 14, accompanied by Captain Mehra and Tarlix, the Krell engineer who had offered to serve as a technical observer for the demonstration. The presence of a respected Krell scientist would add credibility to whatever outcome emerged from this test. The ancient vessel was even more impressive in person than in holographic form. Despite millennia in stasis, it emanated a sense of latent power, a technological achievement from an era when the Council's innovation had not yet been stifled by bureaucracy and tradition. Its hull was composed of a material that seemed to shift between solid and energy states, creating patterns that hinted at functions beyond conventional understanding. Judge Zal Turon and a team of Council specialists observed from a safe distance, protected by energy barriers. The judge's expression remained impassive, but Elara sensed his anticipation. He clearly expected to witness her failure. The Council records indicate that 47 previous attempts to restore the Ascendant have been made over the centuries. Tarlix informed them quietly. Each ended in failure, some catastrophically. The last attempt, 3,000 years ago, resulted in the deaths of 12 of our most brilliant engineers when the ship's power core destabilized. Encouraging, Captain Mehra muttered. Elara approached the vessel slowly, her CDM interface already scanning its complex structure. Immediately, she sensed something unusual. The ship's molecular composition didn't follow patterns consistent with known galactic technology. Its organization seemed almost familiar, despite its alien origin. "This is strange," she said, more to herself than her companions. "The base structure has quantum signatures similar to Earth materials." "Impossible," Tarlix responded, his tendrils waving in disagreement. "This vessel predates humanity's emergence from planetary confinement by thousands of years." Elara shook her head, continuing her scan. "Not impossible, just unexpected." She closed her eyes, allowing her consciousness to interface more deeply with the ship's structure through the CDM link. Images and impressions flooded her mind. Not technical specifications, but something more fundamental, the underlying principles that had guided the vessel's creation. She sensed purpose, intention, and a design philosophy that resonated with her own understanding of matter-energy relationships. "Captain," she said without opening her eyes, "I need you to authorize deployment of all remaining CDM nanomatter from our new ship." "All of it?" he asked, surprised. "That's our entire reserve, if something goes wrong." "I know," she interrupted, "but this is going to require everything we have. Trust me." After a brief hesitation, Captain Mehra activated his communication link and gave the necessary authorization. Moments later, a stream of microscopic particles flowed into the secure dock through specialized conduits, forming a cloud of potential around the ancient vessel. Judge Zal Turon observed this development with obvious interest. "The Terran delegation is expending their entire material reserve on this attempt," he noted to his colleagues, "either supreme confidence or desperate gambling." Elara ignored the comment, focusing entirely on establishing the consciousness-matter link. As the nanomaterial surrounded the Ascendant, she began to perceive more clearly the ship's original design intent. And with that understanding came an astonishing realization. "This ship," she whispered, "it wasn't built by conventional engineering. It was grown." "Grown?" Tarlix repeated, his translator struggling to convey his confusion. "Vessels are constructed, not cultivated." "Not this one," Elara insisted, her eyes still closed as she processed the information flowing through the CDM link. "Its systems weren't assembled component by component. They were developed as an integrated whole, like an organism. That's why conventional repair attempts failed. You can't fix individual parts because everything is connected at the quantum level." This insight changed everything. Instead of trying to repair specific systems, she would need to address the vessel as a unified entity, revitalizing its entire structure simultaneously. Alara took a deep breath, centering her consciousness as Dr. Chow had taught her years ago. "I'm going to attempt full integration," she announced. "The process will look chaotic, but don't interrupt it under any circumstances." Before anyone could respond, she activated the CDM interface at its highest setting. Blue energy surged from her wrist device, connecting with the cloud of nanomatter surrounding the Ascendant. The particles began to pulse with synchronized light, penetrating the ancient vessel's hull and flowing into its deepest systems. For several seconds, nothing visible happened. Then, abruptly, the ship's structure began to shimmer, parts of it becoming translucent as the nanomatter interfaced with its molecular composition. Alarms sounded throughout the secure dock as Council monitoring systems detected massive energy fluctuations. "What's happening?" demanded one of the Council specialists, stepping forward anxiously. "Those readings are approaching critical levels." Zalturon raised a hand for silence, his 4 eyes fixed on the process unfolding before them. "Let it continue," he ordered. "This is unexpected." The Ascendant's hull was now pulsing with waves of energy that shifted between various spectral frequencies. Its damaged sections began to dissolve and reform in new configurations that maintained the vessel's essential character while incorporating fundamentally different architectural principles. Alara stood motionless at the center of this transformation, her consciousness fully engaged with the CDM process. Through the interface, she wasn't merely directing the nanomatter, she was communicating with the ship itself, understanding its original purpose and helping it remember what it was meant to be. "Impossible," whispered one of the Council engineers as readings continued to climb. "She's accessing system functions that have been dormant for millennia. How can she possibly understand technology that predates her entire civilization?" Tarlix's tendrils waved in a pattern expressing profound realization. "She doesn't need to understand it technically," he said. "She's connecting with its conceptual essence, its purpose, rather than its mechanics." The process accelerated, energy cascading through the ancient vessel in waves of brilliant light. Systems that had been dead for thousands of years began to activate, their functions transformed and enhanced by the CDM interface. The ship's hull solidified into a new configuration that honored its original design while incorporating elements reminiscent of the reconstructed Terran vessel. After exactly 7 minutes and 22 seconds, the energy surge subsided. The nanomatter cloud had been completely absorbed, integrated into the ship's new structure. The Ascendant, or what it had become, now hovered serenely in the secure dock, emanating a quiet hum of perfectly balanced systems. Alara opened her eyes, the blue glow of her CDM interface fading to its normal state. She swayed slightly, exhausted by the immense mental effort, and Captain Mehra moved quickly to support her. "It's done," she said simply. The dock remained silent as everyone present struggled to comprehend what they had witnessed. The Council's monitoring systems displayed readings that their specialists clearly found difficult to believe. Energy efficiency, structural integrity, and system integration all registering at levels better beyond established galactic standards. Judge Zalturon approached the energy barrier separating the observation area from the dock itself. For the first time since Alara had encountered him, the Ardelian's posture suggested something other than dismissive superiority. His scales had lightened to a pale blue, an indication of intense interest or surprise among his species. "The vessel appears functional," he acknowledged, his harmonics unusually subdued. "Our preliminary scans indicate complete system restoration, with significant advancements in several key areas." "Not restoration," Alara corrected, finding her strength returning. "Evolution. The ship's original design had limitations that prevented it from achieving its full potential. I simply helped it overcome those constraints." The Vexrian judge's crystalline appendages formed a pattern that indicated deep puzzlement. "You speak as if the vessel were conscious." In a sense, it is, Elara explained. All matter retains impressions of its purpose. Quantum memory that can be accessed through proper interfacing. The Ascendant wasn't just damaged, it was incomplete. Its creators had the right vision but lacked the technological means to fully realize it. She gestured toward the transformed vessel. I didn't impose my understanding on it. I listened to what it was trying to become. The Meridian Judge's cylinder pulsed with complex color patterns before the synthetic voice translated. Our scans detect systems configurations that exceed theoretical models developed by our most advanced research divisions. How did you conceive these implementations? I didn't, Elara said simply. CDM doesn't work by imposing predetermined designs. It establishes a dialogue between consciousness and matter, allowing optimal configurations to emerge naturally. I provided the intention. The technology found its own best expression. Zal Turon's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep contemplation among Ardelians. You claim your consciousness guided this process, yet the resulting technology incorporates principles that your species has never encountered. His harmonics carried a note of lingering skepticism. This requires explanation. Elara met his gaze steadily. Perhaps your assumption about what humanity has or hasn't encountered is flawed. Judge Zal Turon. Our historical records indicate that Earth was visited by spacefaring civilizations long before our official contact with the Galactic Council. This statement caused immediate reaction among the Council representatives. Such claims directly contradicted the official history that positioned the Council as humanity's first extraterrestrial contact. There is no verified evidence of such visitations, one of the Council specialists objected. No evidence recognized by the Council. Captain Mehra corrected. Earth's historical archives contain numerous accounts that were dismissed as mythology or misunderstanding during our integration process. Tarlix moved forward, his tendrils forming a pattern of affirmation. The Krell have long suspected that Council historical records were selectively maintained, he said, particularly regarding early interactions with developing worlds. Zal Turon's scales darkened momentarily before he regained his composure. These speculations are irrelevant to the current demonstration, he declared, though his harmonics betrayed uncertainty. The fact remains that Engineer Nguyen has accomplished something our specialists deemed impossible. He turned to address the assembled observers directly. The Council must now determine the implications of this achievement for Terran-Taharan classification and technological exchange protocols. With that pronouncement, he signaled for his colleagues to withdraw for private consultation. As they departed, the remaining specialists began a more detailed analysis of the transformed vessel, their excitement barely contained despite professional protocols. Captain Mehra approached Elara, speaking quietly. You realized something during the process, didn't you? Something about the Ascendant's origin. She nodded, keeping her voice low. Its quantum signature contained patterns I've seen before, in ancient Earth artifacts that predated our civilization. Dr. Chow had a theory that certain technologies on Earth weren't developed internally, but were inspired by recovered alien materials. You think the Ascendant came from Earth originally? He asked. Surprised. Not exactly, Elara clarified. But I think whoever built it had visited Earth at some point and left their mark on our earliest development. The quantum resonance was unmistakable. Captain Mehra absorbed this information with a thoughtful expression. That would explain Zal Turon's reaction. If Earth has been influencing galactic technology for millennia without recognition, it changes everything about our position in the Council. Elara finished. We're not newcomers being graciously admitted to an established order. We're reclaiming our place in a conversation that began thousands of years ago. Their discussion was interrupted as Tarlix approached, his tendrils rippling with excitement. The preliminary analysis is complete, he informed them. The Council specialists are struggling to categorize what they're seeing. The transformed vessel incorporates at least 17 technological principles that weren't present in the original design, principles that exceed current galactic standards by significant margins. "Will that be enough to change our classification?" Captain Mehra asked. Tarlix's tendrils formed a pattern of certainty. "Based on established protocols, this demonstration qualifies Terra for immediate Tier 2 designation, with potential for Tier 1 consideration following full technological assessment." The implications were enormous. Tier 2 civilizations enjoyed voting rights in the Council, unrestricted travel throughout galactic space, and access to technological exchange programs previously denied to humanity. More importantly, they were recognized as contributors to galactic development rather than merely beneficiaries of established knowledge. Before they could discuss further, a communication alert sounded, indicating an official council transmission. The dock's main display activated to reveal Judge Zalturon, flanked by his colleagues. "The Terran delegation will report to the Grand Assembly Hall immediately," he announced. "The Council has reached a determination regarding today's demonstration and its implications for Earth's status within the galactic community." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving them to wonder what decision had been reached. "That was fast," Captain Mehra observed. "Council deliberations on classification changes typically take weeks." "This isn't typical," Tarlix noted, his tendrils forming a pattern of approval. "What Engineer Nguyen accomplished cannot be dismissed or delayed through normal bureaucratic procedures. It demands immediate recognition." When they arrived at the Grand Assembly Hall, they found it filled to capacity with representatives from virtually every civilization in galactic space. Word of the demonstration had spread rapidly, drawing delegates who had previously shown no interest in Terran technology. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation as the Terran team took their designated position. Judge Zalturon and his colleagues occupied the central podium, their formal ceremonial attire indicating the significance of the occasion. As the chamber quieted, Zalturon rose to address the assembly. "Today, we have witnessed a technological achievement that challenges established understandings and protocols," he began, his harmonics carefully modulated to project authority despite what must have been considerable internal discomfort. "Engineer Elara Nguyen of Terra has demonstrated capabilities that require immediate reassessment of human technological development." He gestured, and holographic displays throughout the chamber showed images of the transformed Ascendant, along with data readings that caused visible reactions among the technically knowledgeable delegates. "The Council has verified that the principles employed in this demonstration represent genuine advancement rather than adaptation of existing technologies. Furthermore, the application of consciousness-directed processes to material reconstruction offers potential benefits across multiple fields of galactic science." His scales shifted to a lighter shade as he continued. "In accordance with established protocols, the Council hereby recognizes Terra as a Tier 2 civilization, with all rights and responsibilities thereof, effective immediately." A murmur of surprise passed through the assembly. While the reclassification itself wasn't unexpected given the demonstration's success, the lack of qualifications or probationary periods was unprecedented. Typically, advancement between tiers occurred gradually, with extensive monitoring and limited implementation of new privileges. "Furthermore," Zalturon continued, "the Council formally invites the Terran delegation to establish a permanent research presence within the Galactic Advanced Technologies Division, with Engineer Nguyen appointed as primary consultant on consciousness-directed materials development." This announcement caused even greater reaction. The Advanced Technologies Division was the Council's most prestigious research entity, responsible for developing the foundational technologies that shaped galactic civilization. No Tier 2 species had ever been granted direct access to its resources and knowledge base. Captain Mehra stepped forward, acknowledging the honor with a formal bow. "The Terran delegation accepts this recognition with appreciation for the Council's fairness and vision," he stated diplomatically. We look forward to contributing to the advancement of galactic science through collaborative research and exchange." His words were perfectly appropriate for the occasion. But Alara noticed the subtle emphasis he placed on collaborative and exchange, reminding the Council that humanity expected reciprocity rather than merely contributing to established galactic projects. Zal Turon nodded in acknowledgement before addressing Alara directly. "Engineer Nguyen, the Council recognizes your personal achievement in developing consciousness-directed matter technology. Your appointment to the Advanced Technologies Division will include unrestricted access to historical archives and current research facilities." The significance of this offer wasn't lost on anyone present. Access to historical archives meant potential verification of Earth's earlier interactions with spacefaring civilizations, interactions that the Council had previously denied or minimized. "Thank you, Judge Zal Turon," Alara responded, maintaining professional composure despite the magnitude of the moment. "I appreciate the opportunity to further develop CDM technology in collaboration with galactic specialists. However, I must respectfully decline the permanent appointment." Her words caused immediate surprise throughout the chamber. Refusing such a prestigious position was virtually unheard of in galactic diplomatic circles. "Explain," Zal Turon requested, his harmonics suggesting genuine confusion. "My work is inextricably connected to Earth and humanity's unique perspective on consciousness-matter relationships," Alara said. "While I welcome collaboration with the Council, relocating permanently to the Advanced Technologies Division would separate me from the cultural and intellectual environment that made CDM possible in the first place." She gestured to her team members. "Our achievements aren't individual. They emerge from collective human understanding and creativity. I believe humanity has more to offer by developing our own technological path while maintaining open exchange with the galactic community." Zal Turon's 4 eyes blinked in succession as he processed this unexpected response. Finally, he inclined his head slightly, a gesture of respect that he had not offered during any previous interaction. "Your perspective honors your species. Engineer Nguyen," he acknowledged. "The Council will establish protocols for collaborative research that respect Terra's independent development while facilitating meaningful exchange." With that, the formal proceedings concluded, though the implications would continue to resonate throughout galactic society for years to come. As delegates approached the Terran team with congratulations and partnership proposals, Alara found herself momentarily separated from the others, standing near one of the chamber's observation windows. The vast expanse of space stretched before her, stars gleaming against the velvet darkness. Somewhere among them was Earth, still developing, still learning, but now recognized as a significant voice in the galactic conversation. She felt a presence beside her and turned to find Judge Zal Turon, his imposing figure silhouetted against the star field. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them waited with the day's events. "You knew," he said finally, his voice pitched low so only she could hear, "about the connection between the Ascendant and early Earth visitations." It wasn't a question. Alara met his gaze steadily, noting that all 4 of his eyes were focused directly on her, a sign of complete attention among Ardelians. "I suspected," she replied honestly. The quantum resonance patterns were distinctive. Dr. Chow identified similar signatures in artifacts recovered from ancient sites on Earth, artifacts that predated our civilization by thousands of years. Zal Turon's scales shifted through subtle color variations that suggested complex emotions. "The Council's historical records are selectively maintained," he admitted, echoing Tarlix's earlier statement, "particularly regarding early interactions with developing worlds." "Why?" Alara asked simply. The judge turned his gaze back to the stars. "Stability," he said after a long pause. "The current hierarchy of civilizations provides structure and predictability. Acknowledging that younger species might have influenced earlier technological development threatens that structure. Truth threatens nothing worth preserving, Alara countered quietly. Zal Turan's upper eyes blinked in what might have been acknowledgement. Perhaps, he conceded. Your demonstration today has already begun to shift perceptions throughout the Council. Other species are questioning classifications that have remained unchanged for millennia. Good, Alara said with conviction. Progress requires questioning established assumptions. A very human perspective, Zal Turan observed, though his harmonics held no mockery this time. One that the Council may need to consider more carefully in future deliberations. With that cryptic statement, he departed, leaving Alara to contemplate the far-reaching consequences of what had begun as a simple technology demonstration. 3 months later, Earth's position within the galactic community had transformed beyond recognition. As a Tier 2 civilization with rapidly expanding influence, humanity had established research partnerships with 17 previously inaccessible species and gained voting rights on key council committees. More significantly, the principles of consciousness-directed matter had sparked a renaissance in galactic materials science, with applications emerging in fields ranging from medicine to environmental restoration. The technology that Judge Zal Turan had dismissed as primitive had become the foundation for a new approach to engineering throughout civilized space. Alara had returned to Earth, declining numerous offers to lead prestigious research institutions on other worlds. Instead, she established the Chow Institute for Consciousness Studies, named in honor of her mentor, where scientists from Earth and beyond collaborated on expanding the theoretical foundations of CDM technology. On the day the Institute officially opened, a package arrived from the Galactic Council. Inside was a small cube of iridescent material that shifted and flowed in response to nearby consciousness. Accompanying it was a message from Judge Zal Turan, brief but profound in its implications. From the archives, recovered from Earth. Approximate date, 15,000 standard years past. Origin unknown. Perhaps you will discover its purpose where we could not. The conversation continues. Alara placed the cube in a special display at the heart of the Institute's main research center. Beside it, she positioned a simple plaque with words that Dr. Chow had often repeated during their work together. Matter is memory. Consciousness is creation. Together, they remember the future. Throughout the galactic community, a new term had entered the lexicon of technological development. The Terran approach, defined as the practice of understanding systems through their essential purpose rather than their mechanical components. Engineers who had once dismissed humanity as primitive now studied Earth's history and culture, seeking insights into the unique perspective that had produced CDM technology. In the Grand Assembly Hall of the Intergalactic High Court, a new installation had been placed near the entrance, a nano-sculpture depicting a young woman holding a broken vessel that was being reconstructed through streams of light flowing from her hands. The plaque beneath it bore no name, only a simple phrase in multiple galactic languages. Innovation requires no permission, and somewhere in the vast archives of the Council, records were being quietly updated, ancient histories reconsidered, and long-established hierarchies questioned, all because an engineer from Earth had refused to accept dismissal and instead rebuilt a ship in 60 seconds.